You're Bailey. Yeah.
Yes. Where do you want me?
You're good. Right there.
Okay.
Where's Rusan?
He is no longer inside.
Oh, I didn't see you there. Good morning. I'm so glad you make it to today's webinar. First, full disclosure. I'm not an expert in adult education. I've been teaching English for nearly a decade, and my students have been mostly in the 16 to 25 age range. But hey, that means a half of them are young adults, so that counts, right? Now, hear me out. I am an adult learner myself. I love learning new skills, especially adjacent skills. These so-called adjacent skills refer to skills that are closely related to the one that you currently possess. I'm a teacher of English, so I've taken courses that I think are very close to English language teaching, such as writing, making presentations, filming, and even philosophy, such as Stoicism. All this to show that I'm an adult learner, and I hope what I'm about to share today will be of value to you. Basically, any adult who learns is an adult learner, and we are indeed learning things every day. Here's a kinda official definition. Adult learners can be defined as persons who are no longer dependent on parents or guardians, have assumed major life responsibilities such as work, family, community, whose self-identities are beyond those of a full-time student, and who operate independently in society. Now, I meet every single criterion in this definition, except the last one kinda, because my wife supervises everything I do. Jokes aside, presenting in this webinar is my chance to learn more about this increasingly relevant field. In a world where machines are taking more jobs and we must learn hard things fast in order to survive and thrive, adult education matters. And the COVID pandemic has shown us that online adult education matters more than ever. I'm so excited to share with you what I've learned, specifically about motivating adults in online learning environments. Let me start with my fitness story. Okay, hear me out. I'm aware that this webinar is about adult learners and online learning. I know that. So don't leave me just yet. Everything will be clear in a few minutes. So I hit the gym over a month ago, and tell you what, I'm loving it. I did try going to the gym before when I was in university and a few times after that, but always ended up quitting after 2 or 3 weeks. However, I know it's different this time. Here's why. First, I come prepared. Before signing up for a membership at the gym, I asked a friend of mine who's been working out for years. For the first time, I learned that bodybuilding isn't about going to a room full of muscle-bulging dudes in tank tops and exercising like a bull. Turns out, it's quite scientific about it. You target different groups of muscles each time you hit the gym, and then you let them rest in between sessions. I understand that working those muscles is as important as letting them rest. Learning only takes place if we allow our brain to consolidate the information through rest and sleep. Psychology is at play here too. I understand that every single rep counts. Everything I do counts towards something in the end. Simply knowing that is pretty motivating, to be honest.
Build that discipline. That's what's first going to allow you to go on that extra reps, go on that extra time. And eventually, your strength is going to catch up with it. You're going to progress super quick. But it's all in the mindset.
This repetition thing will also tie in with the whole learning and motivation, which you see later in this video. Finally, the day I signed up at the gym near my place, I ran into an old colleague. Would you believe that? I worked with him for a couple of years, but never knew he lived in the same area. He happens to have been doing gym for years and has tons of knowledge and experience about fitness and physical training. Now, I intended to post my before-after gym photos here to prove my point, but I dropped the idea for fear of distracting everyone with my transformed, awesome physique. Alright, just kidding. Maybe I'll show you. So you may still be confused. How the heck does this have anything to do with engaging adult learners in online learning? Some may be thinking, well, this dude is clearly flexing for no good reason. I can totally understand that. Though I hope I have not come off as an arrogant person. But honestly, my gym story has everything to do with engaging adult learners in online learning. It demonstrates a few things. First, anxiety is expected. Embarking on a new learning journey can be exhilarating, but anxiety-inducing at the same time. And for adults who return to education after a long while, of course, they'll feel anxious. They enter the classroom with the shadow of the past, the echoes of every figure of authority, the prejudices against themselves, the seeds of insecurity that got sown in them during their schooling days. When they return to formal learning environments, they feel bombarded from all directions. And unless we attend sufficiently well to reducing this anxiety, they cannot have enough presence of mind to learn. Second, intrinsic motivation is what matters. Why do I go to the gym, one may ask? Because I truly enjoy it. If I do it to wow people, I'll soon stop going to the gym. Because when I focus on perceived, often imagined, external expectations, I'll lose my interest in the activity itself. I do what I do because I believe in what Gracian says in his famous book, The Art of Worldly Wisdom. All has reached perfection, and becoming a true person is the greatest perfection of all. Online learning, after all, is learning. Facing the computer screen is a person who is using his or her brain to engage with the lesson, trying to make sense of the information, remember it, and be able to retrieve it later, whether it be for a test or practical usage in a real situation. You see, even something seemingly purely physical, like going to the gym, requires understanding scientific methods. It's both brawn and brain. When we think about online learning, it's very easy to be trapped into thinking that somehow online learning is different, that you must employ some sort of high-tech applications and shiny presentations on the computer screen. We focus on the wrong stuff and get down the rabbit hole of all these tips and tricks that are supposed to make our lessons more engaging. I mean, sure, some of them work well, but the rest is pretty much gimmicks. Here are a few words from Don McIntyre, former president of Fielding Graduate University. In talking about distance learning, I keep stressing that our focus is on the learning process and not the technology. Many institutions are jumping on the technology bandwagon so as to become a part of the information superhighway. In doing so, their goal is to use the technology to transmit a tired and stale pedagogy over fiber optic cable, as if the fiber optic cable will somehow transform the pedagogy. Not only that, we tend to ask ourselves, what can I do to engage my students, and overlook its equally important counterpart, what can the students do to engage themselves in the learning? Furthermore, as online learning removes geographical barriers, our classes are more likely to be populated with people coming from all walks of life. Sure, there are differences in terms of gender, age, and culture, etc., but we must keep in mind that the fundamental psychological traits are universal in humans. When we understand the principles, we can devise optimal strategies to keep our learners engaged and motivated. Essentially, what I want to say is, it is critically important that we have a good grasp of the fundamentals of adult motivation. On the other hand, superficial applications of shiny tech will likely fail because adult motivation tend to be a rather fragile thing. All in all, we must be aware of the learner's incentives. So, What's the deal with motivation? Put simply, motivation is the reasons why you take action. And as mentioned earlier, these reasons can come from outside sources, often associated with your own life, or from within, your values and your beliefs. Especially, adult learners are different from their younger counterparts in that they have a strong motivation derived from the so-called marker experiences such as marriages or career change or employability. It can be helpful to keep this in mind. Now, if you look at several studies on adult learners' motivation, and especially in online learning environments, you likely see the same pattern again and again. That is, motivation is almost always top of the list. Gilly Salmon suggested a 5-stage model for online learning and teaching. And the first stage deals with, you guessed it, motivation. According to Salmon, there could be many reasons why online learners are motivated, but one main reason is participants keep coming back to their learning activities to see if their peers have responded to their messages. Instructors must learn why their students are enrolled. They have to discover what is keeping them from learning. There are many factors that influence learners' motivation. One factor would be the relevancy of the course content, or its practicality. This is obvious because we can easily lose our interest when we find what we are learning is irrelevant. For example, even though the preparation of this video took a big chunk of my time, I remained highly motivated because thanks to having to prepare for this video, I, as an educator, have learned a bunch of useful things that will influence my own teaching practice. Like, I was aware of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation before, but now I know they are the fundamental distinction in the self-determination theory. And not just that, I now know that there's another distinction between autonomous regulation and controlled regulation when it comes to motivation. And that a person can assimilate external reasons, making them their personal core values, and therefore these reasons could be regarded as autonomous, decided by oneself. Now, obviously, I can't discuss every single factor in this video. It's simply overwhelming. So, I'll have a look at the following 3 things: community, power and competence, and teachers' behavior. The greatest untapped source of motivation is a sense of service to others. In a document called Principles of Adult Learning, Stephen Leap identifies motivation as the first critical element that ensures learning. And in motivating learners, he points out that social relationships, aka community, along with 5 other factors, play a key role. Belonging is also identified as one of our 5 genetic needs in the choice theory. Back to my gym story. Like I said earlier, I got anxious when hitting the gym for the first time, seeing all these sweaty, muscle-bulging dudes and having this fear of being judged. I was lucky because the friend I ran into that day made me feel at ease. Just this simple thing of having somebody who is encouraging and non-judgmental significantly reduced my beginner's fear and worries. This is why a learning community is an integral part of any online learning program. A community is where collaborative learning takes place, and it is crucial for creating positive learning outcomes for students. According to Rena Pawloff and Keith Pratt, in their book, Building Online Learning Communities, Effective Strategies for the Virtual Classroom, the failing of many online distance learning programs has been the inability or unwillingness to facilitate a collaborative learning process. And also, electronic pedagogy is about developing the skills involved with community building among a group of learners so as to maximize the benefits and potential that this medium holds in the educational arena. Another great source of motivation, according to the choice theory, is a sense of power and competence. Keep in mind that if something undermines learners' sense of competence, their motivation can crumble. Take, for example, the fear of judgment. Did you know that being called on suddenly to answer a question triggers emotions found in a life-threatening situation? This is because our vulnerability and failure are being witnessed. This fight or flight situations, when happening often enough, can completely demotivate a learner. You see, adults' motivation can be easily shattered when life takes over, especially for women who tend to take on multiple roles. Obviously, it's the facilitator's responsibility to make sure the learning environment is safe and cater to the learner's psychological needs. But on this front, meta-learning, or learning how to learn, is essential. Yes, one of the things that we can do to help learners feel more competent and in control is to teach them how to learn. The truth is, no one is ever taught how to learn. Children just go to school and learn. And we go through life not knowing how to learn. Even most PhD students are never taught how to read research papers effectively. Whereas research has shown that the most intuitive forms of learning are actually ineffective. And really, meta-learning goes beyond just how to understand and digest new information and perform a new skill. It also has a lot to do with something deep inside, such as philosophy and thought processes, and something practical such as time management. Also, as a reassuring measure, we let our adult learners know that it's never too late to learn. This is fact. As teachers, you may already know this. Our students will not be able to retain every bit of knowledge they learned, but the energy we exude and the meta skills they develop during their time with us will likely stay with them for a very, very long time. The third piece in this motivation puzzle is a teacher's behavior. What can we do to motivate our students? Here's a little quote I came across on the internet. An interesting person is an interested person, and so a motivating teacher is a motivated teacher. I'm participating in an online book club, and this gentleman who runs it is the embodiment of a passionate teacher. Have a look.
But then I started reading and reading and reading, and I mean, such private and intimate thoughts that I was compelled to say something about it today. I want you to know that I'm going to match each and every one's sincere efforts 100%. Today and tomorrow are back-to-back sessions that I've put intentionally in the middle of the week. One of the biggest struggles I've seen with people is discovering the how to do something, but never realizing the why they want it. I have to push a bit of the pain here, which I think is important, since it's the push and pull of pleasure and pain that really gets us to where we want to go in life.
Do you see the fire in his eyes and the burning passion in his heart? Who wouldn't want to learn with such a teacher? And the important thing is, he himself is in the process of learning and self-discovery too. To him, every interaction with the club members is a chance to learn. And this mutual support and teaching really propel everyone forwards. This is the kind of teacher I aspire to be, and I think many of us do too. By learning, sharing, aiding, opening ourselves, we grow as a community. By participating in this webinar, you are interested too. And though I have never met you in person, it is my firm conviction that you are interesting and inspiring teachers. When we are motivated to help our students, we will learn. We will develop a strong drive to learn more about adult learners' psychological characteristics and tendencies, how they regulate their emotions, how their brains learn compared to young children's. We will find out that, marker experience is a thing. And from there, we'll incorporate into our course a sharing session where participants share their own marker experiences. If we're still motivated and interested, we will find out that, this thing called control regulation should be discouraged. Finally, our open-mindedness can also be incredibly motivating. This gives the learners a concrete sense of power, that they do have a voice in their learning process. According to Pavlov and Pratt, the learners can take on the process manager role. They say, the role of process manager is the one that most significantly sets online teaching and learning apart from the face-to-face classroom. All right, everybody. We've talked about motivation, why it matters, and what can help maintain it. Now, in this last part of the video, I'd like to make some recommendations. And though I said at the beginning that we should avoid falling into the technology rabbit hole, I will also suggest the use of some applications. Back to anxiety. When adults return to education, they may feel incredibly overwhelmed. So do give them time and guidance. Keep in mind that our brain is constantly watching out for potential threats. We tend to focus on negative interpretations of experience. Here's one specific activity recommended in the book, Facilitating Learning with the Adult Brain in Mind, a conceptual and practical guide. In the first session, we ask, how many people are in this room? After the number is established, we say, actually, this room is far more crowded than it appears, and ask learners to take a few minutes thinking about how they see themselves as learners, the messages about themselves as learners, and the people and situations they connect with these messages. Then we offer paper and crayons. The participants will sketch without writing words to show what those people and messages are. Remember to set the rule of using non-dominant hand so that people can focus on what they sketch and not making beautiful pictures. Debriefing the sketches can be an effective way to evoke powerful feelings. This way, the participants learn to identify positive and negative messages they have about themselves and take charge of their own emotions. They can then decide which people they should kick out of the room and which they invite to stay. Having a healthy learning community is one of the best ways to keep learners motivated. I'm not running any community right now, but I do join a few. You'll be surprised by how encouraging and kind people can be, even though they barely know us personally. One free platform I often see people use these days is Discord. On this platform, you can create servers for different topics and assign member roles. It's basically Facebook Messenger, but with powerful features geared towards community building. As you can see here, whenever I raise a question in this Discord server, there's almost always someone who's willing to help me find a solution. Over time, Discord can also become a great resource for new members. The search function works great, and I often find solutions to my problems without bothering everyone in the chat. John Dunlosky is a professor of psychology and the director of experimental training at Kent State University. His research focuses on self-regulated learning and how it can be used to improve student achievement across the lifespan. He and his colleague examined the efficacy of 10 common learning strategies and ended up with 2 most effective strategies: practice testing and distributed practice. People tend to seize up when they hear the word test. This is because tests are often put at the end of a semester to assess students' knowledge. Tests provoke anxiety. However, viewing tests as the end, the final outcome, is doing a disservice to learners. Testing should be viewed as a means, a way of learning, the process itself. A simple example of testing as a way of learning is this. You read, say, a paragraph in a textbook. Then you close the book and tell yourself in your words what you have read. Can you explain what you've read to someone else? What are the key takeaways? This way of learning forces our brain to work. Neurons that fire together wire together. Learning in this way helps strengthen the neural circuits. The other effective learning strategy, distributed practice, is also referred to as spaced repetition. That is, we distribute or space our practices across time. Say you want to learn a new word in English. You should learn it once in the morning, then perhaps later in the afternoon, and then before you go to bed. Then the next day. Then the next 2 days. Then the next 7 days, and space it out over time. Obviously, when adults know how to learn effectively, they save time. This helps them better balance their life, work, and studies. Learning effectively, staying on top of things, also gives learners a sense of competence and power. An application I'd like to suggest to implement practice testing and distributed practice is RemNote. Although this note-taking app has a premium package, its free offer is more than enough for an average user. See here how I can organize the notes I take. The app employs the use of bullet points and hierarchical structures, as you can see here. I often write the notes in my own words and use nested bullet points so that I can later apply practice testing. See here, when I look at effective filter, I would test myself about what goes underneath. It really helps consolidate neural connections related to this piece of information. Furthermore, RemNote also has this built-in flashcard system that allows you to space or distribute your practice over time based on your own feedback. You can easily create flashcards in RemNote. These cards go to a queue. Every day, we set aside a little time to go through the queue. Even here, practice testing plays the key role. Before I click on Show Answer, I always test myself first. Teachers are lifelong learners. As teachers, we must always push the frontier of our own knowledge, not just the specialized knowledge we are supposed to impart, but also anything that allows us to better support our learners in their journey. Having a vast knowledge on learning, and adult learning specifically, can pay huge dividends. Imagine an old student sends you a private message claiming that their aging brain is no longer capable of learning. You'll be able to show them that being a lifelong learner is likely to enhance one's cognitive capacities. That a long-term study of over 400 Catholic nuns, some of them 100 years old, showed that those who had continued education and kept their mind active with cognitively challenging learning tasks were less likely to develop dementia. When we keep learning, we can find more joy in our professions and continue the virtuous circle of motivation. When we keep adding more strings to our bow, we increase our own employability in the VUCA world. Yuval Noah Harari says in his recent book, "In the 21st century, you can't afford stability. If you try to hold on to some stable identity, job, or worldview, you risk being left behind as the world flies by you with a whoosh." Finally, we should not look at online learning as a mediocre alternative to face-to-face learning, but as another excellent mode of learning with significant potentials waiting to be tapped into. We as teachers must see ourselves differently in this new light. We now have multiple identities: teachers, leaders, community builders, engineers, showing students the mechanisms of learning. This is the way onward. Back to my disclaimer at the beginning of the presentation. I may not meet your standards of an expert in the field, but if this video intrigues you, makes you curious and eager to learn, then I can say that this little video of mine is a success. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, and see you very soon in a moment.